Hello fans of all ages, Ryan Morick back here with you. New York Mets once again making moves. They traded away Steven Matz last night to Toronto. They got 3 prospects in return. We all know the reason why they traded away Steven Matz. It shaves $5.2 million off of their payroll, and they're trying to make a move for Trevor Bauer, if not something else, maybe and something else, as a matter of fact. But before I talk about Steven Matz and the New York Mets and their possibilities of getting Trevor Bauer, I want to talk about Masahiro Tanaka going back to Japan. Masahiro Tanaka was probably the most underrated pitcher of my lifetime as far as the New York Yankees are concerned. This guy was an absolute dog for 7 years, a career ERA of 3.78 with the New York Yankees, and he had 5 seasons alone with an ERA below that, as recently as 2020 where he had a 3.56 ERA. He was never dominant like you see a Jacob deGrom or a Garrett Cole, but he was a perfectionist. This guy was one of the fiercest competitors that the Yankees have had in a long time. He did it with some craft that you don't see a lot of pitchers have nowadays. And before 2020, everyone knows the postseason resume that Masahiro Tanaka had. In his first 8 starts, even including that one start against Houston where Springer had that 3-run home run, he had a 1.76 ERA. At one point, he was up there with Sandy Koufax and some of the best pitchers of all time in terms of postseason and October baseball. The rain delay in Cleveland affected him, and when you face a team 4 or 5 times in 7 years, a team kind of catches up to you in the postseason, and the Rays were a good team, and Masahiro Tanaka just did not have his stuff against the Rays in that one game in the ALDS this year. But nonetheless, Tanaka, congratulations on your contract, I guess. I'm sad to see Tanaka go because personally, and I've said this before, I think it's very much of a risk for the New York Yankees to take a chance on Corey Kluber for around the same amount of money that they probably could have gotten Masahiro Tanaka back for. And honestly, I've seen a lot of people say that the elbow is still an issue. The elbow is not an issue. If Masahiro Tanaka did not get hurt in 2020, where he had to revamp and then sit down and then revamp again in the middle of July, and then keep in mind, he got hurt again in summer camp with that line drive to the head, so he had to sit down for another few weeks. If he didn't get Tommy John surgery in 2020, the elbow is a non-issue in my personal opinion. Now, I'm no doctor, but the doctors did say, hold off on Tommy John surgery. We'll see how far this thing can go. And then he never had any elbow issues for the remainder of his career as a New York Yankee. So I'm surprised to see that the Yankees are taking a risk on Corey Kluber, who has 37 innings, not even in the last 2 years, when they could have gotten a proven starter in Masahiro Tanaka, a guy who has been arguably the heart and soul of their pitching rotation since he came over to New York, and a guy who you know can perform under the brightest lights. Again, aside from his last 2 starts, which I'm not going to say ruined his postseason legacy, because his postseason ERA is still 3.33, and his whip is still under 1 in the postseason, and that's even with those last 2 starts in this past postseason. So I'm surprised to see the Yankees just move on from him very quickly, but they couldn't wait to bring in Corey Kluber. That to me is a little bit surprising, but again, we do know the upside that Corey Kluber has. Do I think it's really there after being off for 2 years essentially? I don't know. But hey, if Corey Kluber is the old Cy Young candidate that he was a few years ago, then hey, good for the Yankees. I hope that happens. I don't see it happening. Personally, I think Corey Kluber is either going to be a Cy Young candidate or a horrible pitcher. I don't think there's going to be an in-between. And I don't think the Yankees are in much of a place where they should be taking risks. Now, Jameson Taillon, I get $2 million, fine. But Corey Kluber, $11 million when you could have gone Tanaka for probably around that same price? The Yankees didn't even give Masahiro Tanaka a qualifying offer. So you know Tanaka's asking price can't be that high. It was what, $18.5, $19 million, the QO? So Tanaka's asking price obviously went down a little bit. But nonetheless, Tanaka, one of the most underrated, underappreciated pitchers that the Yankees have had in a long time. I think in my lifetime, personally, he has been the most underrated pitcher that I've seen out of the Yankees uniform. Sad to see him go. I hope he finds success, and hopefully he'll come back to the Yankees in a couple of years, because Kluber and Taillon, we don't really know what their situation is. Kluber is also signed to a 1-year deal, so we'll see. But Tanaka is going to be missed. I think that anyone who is saying good riddance to Tanaka, quite frankly, doesn't know much baseball, because I think that Tanaka lived up to the contract. He was a dog in the postseason for the most part. He kept the Yankees alive more often than he did not, and that's for sure. But now the main reason for this video, New York Mets trading away Steven Matz, shaving $5 million off of their salary cap. We all know why they traded Steven Matz. They want to get Trevor Bauer. I'm going to have a hot take here. I'd be very careful with Trevor Bauer. I don't know if he's all that good. You take a look at his 2020 numbers, they're obviously amazing. He had a 1.73 ERA. But look at who he went up against. 10 of his 11 starts were against teams that were in the bottom third of team OPS. Detroit, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, the Cubs. He played against 2 bad offensive divisions. He had 1 start against the White Sox. And yeah, he was good in the postseason, but, and let's be real here, Trevor Bauer has been mediocre at best. As recently as 2020, 2019. He had a 4.48 ERA that year. And again, this 1.73 ERA, it was in 60 games. He had 11 starts. Now, that's not to say that he wouldn't have kept it up. And I do think that Trevor Bauer has some talent. But I think Trevor Bauer is kind of like Bryce Harper, where nothing that he does would surprise you. His career numbers are good, but he also benefits from 2 good seasons, and the other 5 have been average at best. And that's being pretty nice, honestly. Trevor Bauer has had 5 of his 7 seasons with an ERA over 4.17. Think about that. So his career ERA is somewhere in the 3.7, 3.8, but most of his seasons have not been all that great. And again, Trevor Bauer does have good stuff. Trevor Bauer does have talent. You don't have a 1.73 ERA on accident. And even in 2018, he had a very good year. He was a Cy Young candidate that year as well. But for his asking price, I'd be very careful if I'm any team. Now, the New York Mets, they're not trading away Steven Matz because they think that their rotation is good enough. The Mets have 5 starters, but that's it. They only have 5 starters. You take a look at the New York Yankees, they have 8, 9, 10 starters. Now, they don't have 10 good starters, but they at least have depth. The Mets don't have starting pitching depth at all. They had it with Matz, but Matz hasn't been good. And I feel bad for Steven Matz because he was the Long Island kid. He came up in 2015 and he was a big role in making it to that World Series that year. He became a fan favorite on his debut. He had 4 RBI, pitched 7 2/3 innings of 2-run ball, but he just couldn't make it work. He never was able to put it all together. And I feel bad for Matz, but hopefully a change of scenery will help him out. But again, the New York Mets are trading away a pitcher because they think that they can get Trevor Bauer. And Steve Cohen, look, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about this whole stock market and GameStop and how Steve Cohen is involved. I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert. I don't know anything about stocks. But Steve Cohen, remember, has said that he's comfortable with going over the luxury tax. Now, I don't think that if they kept Steven Matz, they would have been able to get Trevor Bauer and someone else. But I think getting rid of Steven Matz, and I still think, and I know the Mets know this, they need a center fielder badly. They also need a third baseman, but at least they have someone at third base who's pretty good offensively. And they have Luis Guillorme, who is a good glove, who can come in for defense later on in games. But center field is a problem, and the Mets know it. Left field is a problem. They don't have a very good outfield, except Michael Conforto in right. But right now, it's looking like Dominic Smith is the everyday left fielder, who's great offensively, but Sandy Alderson even said it is not ideal for Dom Smith to play left field every day. And it's certainly not ideal for Brandon Nimmo to be in center field every day. Take WAR for what you will. I'm not in love with the stat, but I do know a lot of people like it. Jake Marisnick had a higher WAR than Brandon Nimmo in 2019. And Brandon Nimmo is very good offensively. He gets on base. He has a great eye. But Jake Marisnick's defense was so good that his WAR was above Brandon Nimmo's. The Mets need a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr. And I was very surprised to see that they didn't get George Springer. And I'm even more surprised that they were okay passing on George Springer, but they really want Trevor Bauer. That to me doesn't make much sense. Because in my opinion, before this Steven Matz trade, and I even think now, because they do have 5 starters if you want to include Joey Lucchesi in this rotation. They don't have depth, but they do have a complete rotation. You have DeGrom, Stroman, Carrasco. You have David Peterson. When Noah Syndergaard comes back, he's going right into the rotation. And again, you have Lucchesi. So when Syndergaard comes back, Joey Lucchesi is probably going to be your 6th starter, or your spot starter, I should say, because I don't think they're going to go 6-man. So with Syndergaard back, they do have 6 starting pitchers. It's a complete rotation. They have a certified ace, in my opinion, the best pitcher in all of baseball. Marcus Stroman and Noah Syndergaard, we've seen them at their best. Noah Syndergaard was one of the best pitchers in all of baseball from, 2015 to 2018? He was among the elite. We've seen what Stroman can do. The Mets are high on David Peterson. And Joey Lucchesi is a pretty good strikeout pitcher. And he's young and has a few years of control. So we'll see what the Mets can do with him. And Carlos Carrasco is up there with one of the more underrated pitchers in all of baseball as well. So they have a complete rotation. They don't need Trevor Bauer. So that's why it's pretty surprising to see the New York Mets try to move arm and leg to get Trevor Bauer. Now, the good thing about the Mets getting Bauer, if it happens, is that you're not asking Trevor Bauer to be your ace. You have your ace. Jacob deGrom is the opening day starter, and he's going to be the opening day starter until the end of his career. The Mets have their opening day starter for the next, I don't even know how many years. The Mets better re-sign him in a couple of years. You're asking Trevor Bauer to be a solid 2 or 3. And again, if Noah Syndergaard and Marcus Stroman are at their best, that means that you have Stroman, Syndergaard, Bauer, and Carlos Carrasco to fill out 2 through 5. And if they're all at their best, that's by far the best rotation in all of baseball. But again, with what Trevor Bauer is asking for, and we saw what George Springer got, and center field has been a problem for you basically since Carlos Beltran got traded, I was surprised to see that they didn't break the bank for George Springer and then just divert right to Trevor Bauer. Now, at the time, I was saying that it's okay for the Mets to not get George Springer, because I thought that they were going to divert to a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr. and Brad Hand, who wound up going to Washington. But we saw the New York Mets get Aaron Loop, which is a nice pickup. They needed a lefty in that bullpen. He's no Brad Hand, but he's going to get the job done. Maybe the Mets can use one more reliever, but I do like that bullpen a little bit. Edwin Diaz, I think, is personally very good. He had a rough 2019, obviously, but 2020, he was great. Still strikes out guys at an alarming rate. You got Della Betances, you got got Trevor May. I think Seth Lugo is going to be in the bullpen, and he's going to be damn good as a reliever. He has been damn good as a reliever. That's a nice bullpen. And now you add Aaron Loop, a left-handed reliever. I think the bullpen is now okay. But you still have a gaping hole in center field and a complete rotation. And hey, I'm not going to say that getting Trevor Bauer is stupid. Would I pay him 5 years, $35 million? No. But for the right price, I wouldn't mind having Trevor Bauer as a 2 or 3. But again, with the gaping hole that's in center field, is getting Trevor Bauer that worth it? Now again, because they traded Matz, I don't think that they're just going to stop at Trevor Bauer. Now it might take them out of the running for Jackie Bradley Jr., but if there's another center fielder on the market that they can get along with Trevor Bauer, now it's a possibility. Because they are saving $5 million from trading away Steven Matz. But in my personal opinion, you already missed out on the best center fielder on the market. Do you really want to miss out on the second best center fielder in the market? And no, Jackie Bradley Jr. isn't going to light it up offensively. He was decent in 2020 offensively, but again, who knows with 60-game seasons. But Jackie Bradley Jr. is probably the best defensive center fielder in all of baseball. That would be an insane upgrade from Brandon Nimmo in center, or when Michael Conforto was playing center. They haven't had a good defensive center fielder since Juan Lagares when he won a Gold Glove in 2014. They need someone who is going to be a ball hawk in that big center field. And Jackie Bradley Jr. is that. And look, if the Mets did have Trevor Bauer, this Mets offense is good from top to bottom. But their defense will not be very good, especially on the left side. J.D. Davis is going to be your third baseman. He's very bad defensively. There's no ifs, ands, or but about it. Dominic Smith, I think the more you leave him in left field, he can improve. But if there's a DH, who knows who's going to play left field after that? Because you're going to want Dominic Smith and Pete Alonso to trade some places DHing. So we'll see what they do with that. I personally think that this money should go to Jackie Bradley Jr. and a starter like Jake Odorizzi. I thought the Mets should have gotten Masahiro Tanaka, but obviously he's going back to Japan. But I think that this money is much better spent with Jackie Bradley Jr. and Jake Odorizzi over Trevor Bauer, especially because of the inconsistencies that Trevor Bauer has. And I haven't even touched on this yet. He's a bit of a personality. I'm not going to sit here and say he can't handle New York. I don't even pretend to know anything about that. Sometimes I think that not handling New York is kind of a myth, but you know damn well that the media will be on this guy. And he is certainly a character on social media. And I don't think that's going to fly. There's nothing wrong with solidifying your rotation. There's nothing wrong with arguably having the best rotation in all of baseball. But there's a problem spending money where it doesn't need to be spent when you have glaring holes elsewhere. I just think the Mets need to be very careful when it comes to breaking the bank with Trevor Bauer. I'm going to wrap things up right here. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned to SNY and whatever, because something big is going to happen with the Mets very, very soon. It is not goodbye. It is see you later. So long. Take care, everybody. They just traded away Steven Matz to...
Hey guys!
Great job. They ship away Steven Matz to Long Island. I'm a idiot.